You are tuned in to the Nonprofit Chatter, brought to you by Nonprofit Pro with our friends at Pursuant. Nhu Te and Taylor Shanklin are getting real and sitting down with nonprofit leaders to chatter about issues affecting nonprofits today. Be sure to subscribe to us in your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss these conversations with your nonprofit peers. And check us out on the web at nonprofitpro.com/podcast/nonprofit-chatter.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nonprofit Chatter podcast, hosted by me, Nhu Te, Editor-in-Chief of Nonprofit Pro.
And me, Taylor Shanklin, VP of Marketing at Pursuant.
The Nonprofit Chatter will give you an insider's look on the most pressing challenges facing nonprofit leaders and fundraisers today. And we talk about how nonprofits can overcome those challenges. In each episode, we will engage in invigorating conversation with industry leaders and find out what tools and tactics nonprofits need in their repertoire to help their vision become a reality.
So in episode number 6 of the Nonprofit Chatter, we are going to discuss the importance of establishing a nonprofit brand. We will be joined today by Lindrea Reynolds, Director of Marketing and Brand Development at After School Matters, and Leah Davenport, Digital and Product Marketing Specialist at Pursuant.
Lindrea and Leah, thank you so much for joining me and Taylor on the Nonprofit Chatter. We are really looking forward to unveiling more about brand development. So before we get started, how are you both doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Happy to have you guys on.
Good.
I'm doing well as well. Yeah, I'm happy to see the sun come out after a couple of rainy days here in Dallas.
Oh, that's so lucky because we have snow here in Philadelphia.
I was just about to say that in Chicago, it is so slushy. It's not fun.
Oh, gosh.
Did you guys get hit in Chicago last night? I was in Chicago and I left and I heard that another storm was coming through.
Yes. Like 1 o'clock in the morning, it just hit us. And, Chicago, you just don't know what the season is going to be here. So I just want consistency.
Right.
Oh, my God. That's, well, I hope it clears up soon for you. I think the storm here is supposed to last about a day, but it's supposed to be icy. So hopefully I don't fall on the way home.
No, please don't.
Throw some salt down, Nhu. Throw some salt down.
As I walk.
Yes.
As you walk. Flower girl.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get started. So as you know, many nonprofits don't think of their organizations as brands. So Lindrea, can you explain why nonprofits should shift their way of thinking and embrace the nonprofit brand mentality?
Nonprofits are absolutely brands. And when I think about brands, and it's so interesting because when you look up the word brand, there's so many different definitions. Everyone tries to define brand, and how do you define it? With it being, what's the difference between a brand and a business? And I think what a brand is a promise. And nonprofits definitely offer a promise. For example, here at After School Matters, our promise is to help teens find their future and discover their potential. And so you definitely have to shift your thinking because if a nonprofit offers a promise, then it is a brand. And just like many organizations, many for-profit corporations, we have assets and offerings, we have a mission, we have approach, and we have skills. And all of those are needed to develop a very recognizable brand or an affinity brand. So I think you definitely have to shift the thinking with nonprofits and knowing that they are a brand because they are, if that makes sense.
You know what's really fascinating is I think that nonprofits don't think of themselves as brands because they're established as a cause. They're established from the standpoint of we see a problem in the world and we want to fix it. And so to that, and thinking about branding and marketing can seem a little bit superficial. But I think that it's really, really crucial, especially for a new nonprofit or even a legacy nonprofit that's been around for a while, to actually take a step back and look at what differentiates what our nonprofit does from similar nonprofits, because that differentiator is pretty core to what makes your brand distinct.
Excellent. So now that we've established the importance of a brand, can you talk about the first step a nonprofit should take in establishing a brand? And along those lines, in your opinion, what is the number one rule for brand development? Lindrea, why don't you kick off this question?
I think the number one rule for brand development is really identifying your values and what do you value in terms of what your organization offers, and just knowing, similar to what Leah was saying about being cause related. Nonprofits are causes, right? So really establishing your values, your mission, and your vision that you want, all of your constituents to know about your organization, and the importance of why your beneficiaries are important to you. So really establishing your mission, mission, vision, and values. I think that's important.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Lindrea, and it really resonates with something that I read recently about what motivates people to connect with a brand. So a few years ago, the Harvard Business Review put out this article that said an emotional connection is actually more important than customer satisfaction. And within that article, they outlined what they called high impact motivators. And so these are reasons that people engage with a brand, whether it's a for-profit brand or a nonprofit brand. So a couple of these high impact motivators are people want to stand out from the crowd, like projecting a unique social identity. They also want to have confidence in the future, or enjoy a sense of well-being, or feel a sense of belonging, or be the person that they want to be, or feel secure. And so I think, tying back to what you said so articulately about branding and about vision and about value, it's identifying those key connection points where your values as a nonprofit tie into these really high impact motivators for people.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Leah, because I also think for nonprofits, when you're trying to figure out, the emotional connection that you want to have with your audience, it's important. Lee brought up a great point about differentiation. Nonprofits have to understand and evaluate their approach to how they engage with their different audiences. And I like to use the word advocates. Because unlike customers, I believe that our customers, per se, for nonprofits are our advocates, because they're the ones that are going to share our mission with others and engage new influencers and supporters. So it's really important for nonprofits, as they're developing their brands, to really think about their approach and how that differentiates themselves from other organizations.
Yeah.
As well.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I couldn't agree more, Lindrea and Leah. Those are excellent points. And to piggyback off that a little bit, in order for nonprofits to maintain a good and healthy brand, they really need to achieve consistency. And what I mean by that is that if there are lapses in their branding, that would really reflect poorly on the organization, and we don't want that. So how can nonprofits be consistent with their brand? And can you also share some things they should avoid?
I'll take this one if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So there was I was able to attend this really great session at a marketing summit recently here in Dallas. And it was a session about how the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, they rebranded this institution that had been around for a long time. And it's an institution that employs more than 2,000 people. And so a couple of things that they did in that rebranding process was they recognized that each individual person at the organization was an advocate and a representative of the Met. And so they created this internal branding website for each of the different, and it outlined each of the different departments. It stated the values of the Met right there at the beginning, and it codified their messaging from both a visual standpoint and a verbal standpoint. That way people within the organization could feel empowered to make sure they were creating a really ideal experience for guests and visitors at the museum. And so I think a couple of takeaways from that are that nonprofits, it's not just the marketing team at a nonprofit that's in charge of the brand and that's in charge of the messaging. It's every single person, whether it's the person doing phone outreach to the board. Everyone needs to be bought into that mission and those values, and making sure that they feel empowered as a representative of the nonprofit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Leah. You took the words right out of my mouth. I think that really establishing a consistent brand across the board, and there's a branding guide. I think branding guides are crucial with developing within your organization. It's good to use for onboarding new staff. It's good to use for sharing out with vendors, because I think sometimes, as nonprofits, we have to outsource so many different, every nonprofit is different, right? So you have small ones, you have large ones, and some of the small ones have to kind of outsource some of their projects and some of their marketing and some of their design and even some of their messaging. So even having a branding guide, I think to Leah's point when she mentioned the website, but just having some type of branding guide and some type of process to onboard people to the actual what the actual brand is and what it means. Consistency is important, and to Leah's point, everyone needs to be on board, because you can easily experience mission drift if everyone doesn't quite understand what the mission is, what the values are, what are our key messaging. Earlier I mentioned some of Scott Lerman. He wrote this book called Building Better Brands, and he mentioned assets and offerings. And, I think all of these things have to be in a couple of places, key places where key audience members and key advocates have access to it, so that everything is consistent across the board.
So, Lindrea, I love that you said that. Totally 100% agree that just making the access to the content is super important. And, Leah, to your point, and the example of the Met, I think is a great one, because it's really building this culture of the brand from within and having that permeate the representation of the organization as a whole. So that's really great. I wanted to just, as we wrap up, point out a couple of top things that I like that you guys said, and I want to reiterate upon it. So Lindrea, I thought this was great. I love what you said. What a brand is a promise. If a nonprofit offers a promise, then it is a brand. I've never heard anyone talk about it in that way, as a promise being the brand. And I really love that you said that. So I want that to stick with people listening. Leah, a couple of things that you said too that I really, really liked and wanted to point out again and have stick with people are those unique value motivators. So when organizations are thinking about how they connect with people, what are those unique motivators that are going to connect with different types of people who support a cause, right? So it's not just, hey, everyone's kind of the same and motivated to support us for the same reasons, right? And so really identifying those is important in thinking about that from a branding perspective. So I love that you said that. Really great stuff. Great examples today. Lindrea, Leah, again, it's been awesome having you on. So thanks for taking your time and sharing your thoughts with us on the nonprofit chatter on, brand development and this topic, which is one that is a lot of fun to talk about. So thanks again. That about wraps it up for today's episode.
Thank you.
Ladies, thank you so much for sharing your insights and thoughts on this really important topic that I think nonprofits tend to overlook. So on that note, on behalf of Nonprofit Pro and Pursuant, we will see you on the next episode of the Nonprofit Chatter. Thanks, everybody.